What's happening? Welcome to Blues Lawyer Confessional. Let's talk about a case that we discussed before, Matt. The Gibson versus Heritage and Heritage versus Gibson, or cases, I guess you would say. And most recently, the case has been ended where both companies are paying their own legal fees. It has been dismissed with prejudice. So explain to us normal folks what dismiss with prejudice means, what the implications are that both sides have to pay their own legal fees, and is that the end of Gibson fighting Heritage?
Legal fees, that's actually a complete non-starter anyways. There's two sort of models. There's the American model and there's the British model. Britain and a lot of places that are modeled after Britain, they have a loser pays legal fee model. The United States, the attitude is you pay your own way, regardless if you win. The only exception is if there is an express agreement to pay someone else's legal fees. It varies by state as to how strict it should be. I mean, just as a practical matter, if you're ever reading any fine print on the back of something and you read, you agree to indemnify us and hold us harmless. Hold harmless means pay legal fees. As far as the with prejudice, without prejudice means theoretically they could bring it back at a later date. In my day-to-day business, when I dismiss a case, when we've reached an agreement, there's a stipulation of settlement, and we agree to dismiss without prejudice. If, for example, they don't hold up their end of the bargain, I can then rebring the action, or I can vacate the dismissal. But the point is, dismissing without prejudice means you get another bite at it. Dismissing with prejudice means it's in the rearview mirror, it's gone, it's in the past. Now, as for what the case was about, the parties suing each other. Ordinarily, there's a plaintiff and a defendant. The plaintiff sues the defendant, and the defendant says, nuh-uh. Here there is a counterclaim, and a counterclaim is when the defendant then sues the plaintiff in return. There's also what are called cross claims, and the way I was taught this was that a counterclaim goes across the V. So Smith v. Jones, when Jones sues Smith in return, that's a counterclaim, whereas a cross claim doesn't cross that V. So if you had Smith v. Jones and Anderson, so Smith sues Jones, Jones sues Anderson, that's a cross claim. Here, they sued each other. A counterclaim is kind of retaliatory, but it's perfectly fair.
Oh, hey there. Support for Blues Lawyer Confessional is brought to you by Manscaped, the leader in men's below-the-waist grooming. I just got my Performance Package 4.0. Let's check it out. The Crop Preserver and Crop Reviver change the game of below-the-waist hygiene. Trust me, your balls will thank you. The unsung hero of the Performance Package 4.0 is this shed. It holds all your stuff where you need it, when you need it. Perfect for travel and at home. So less fiddling and go to manscaped.com. Use the code BluesLawyer to get 20% off and free shipping worldwide. Go do it now. Manscaped.com, BluesLawyer, 20% off and free shipping.
Gibson tried suing, saying, now you're counterfeiting us. We don't want to be doing this license. And Heritage retaliated and said, you're doing anti-competitive practices. This is an antitrust violation. This is actually a very common thing. Usually parties may sue one another to try to get a little bit more leverage to actually work out a deal. That's usually how this happens. If something gets to trial, what that means is that the negotiation failed. The worst thing that either side really wants to do is trust their fate to a party that has absolutely no knowledge or interest of the underlying claims. You just wouldn't want to do that.
Something that someone brought up, relationship with BandLab. Do you recall that from previous discussion?
Yeah.
I think one of the concerns that Heritage had was Heritage is partly owned or is owned by BandLab now. And so what Heritage / BandLab was concerned that their deal was now, their deal was off from their 1991 agreement to making the Gibson style guitars, because now they were owned by BandLab, so Gibson felt the deal was off, which the Heritage folks didn't like. And so I'm glad that they worked things out, because despite their kind of parent company, they still had a deal. Is it common that if a company gets taken over or purchased, that previous agreements come back under question? How does that work?
Well, it could be. I mean, licenses are funny things. A license may or may not be transferable. So I don't know what the underlying agreement was. As I recall, it was some kind of somewhat secret deal, anyways. So that deal may have been between Gibson and Heritage as it then existed, and it didn't extend to Heritage's assigns or future owners or anything like that. We'll never know because the details of the settlement are confidential. Frankly, it's inside baseball. Who really cares? Ultimately, the winner here in this case is everyone. Gibson got their interests protected. Yay. Heritage, actually, they won because they got themselves into the news. They had free advertising, and because they're not Gibson, they are therefore the scrappy underdog. And I think they got a little bit of interest going that they may not have otherwise had. So they win there. And then ultimately, I think that you, me, the rest of the guitar buying public wins because we're going to find it easier to find Heritage guitars.
Yeah, they're at Sweetwater now, right?
They are at Sweetwater. I got to say, it's when I finally scrape up enough cash to get another Les Paul or Les Paul style guitar, I don't know if I would go with a Gibson. I understand that, only a Gibson is good enough, but I think a Heritage could be good enough too.
Yeah.
And Heritage, if you're watching, again, drop us
Just
a comment.
Like
we'll let you know where you can send your H150s. I don't need the custom core.
Just like all the viewers said that we've got the inside track and all the brands listen to us. So that's what's important.
Oh yeah.
Heritage Guitars website is updated since the last time we spoke about them. So that's nice. They've got some nice interactive high def video and glamorous shots. So good for them. Now send a couple our way. We'd love to play on those. Fantastic. Less fiddling, more playing.